Welcome, everyone. We're excited you're here. We're going to give everybody about, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. You can turn on your camera if you want to. You're welcome. Great to see your faces this morning or afternoon, wherever you're at. All right. So welcome, everybody. Very excited to have you here today. My name is Alicia Powers. I'm the Director of Instructional Design here at VIA Institute on Character. And I'm going to just talk about a couple quick housekeeping items as we're getting started. So a few things that you'll notice is that you're on mute today, but we heavily encourage you to please participate in the chat. We love a chat participation. We'll have a few folks from VIA monitoring the chat to help support. Additionally, you can turn on captions and get a transcript or a translation for yourself if you need that. So we welcome that you do that as well. I just want to acknowledge who's holding space with me today. We have Sarah Webb, our marketing manager, on the call with us today, and she's going to be supporting in the chat and with breakout logistics, so you'll hear from her a little bit later. We also have Moxie John and Alex Stanislaw on the call, and they will also be in the background helping. So if you've got questions, VIA is here today. We got a VIA party going on, so we're ready to support you. And then I am so excited that we're joined by three truly wonderful practitioners, Marina, Branigan, Tenelle Anderson, and Tom Bagwell, who you'll meet more fully here in a few minutes. But Tom, Marina, Tenelle, wave, they're on camera. You can see them. And so we're going to just go ahead and get started. I just really want to welcome you again. Name that we're so happy you're here. Today is really about experiencing what we mean at VIA when we say workplaces at their best. So our focus is really going to be on the practice, the experience of this. You'll have an opportunity to choose a breakout room that's most relevant to your current work, or maybe it's just where your curiosity is pulling you. But our genuine hope is that by the end of your time here today, you won't just understand this general idea about strengths-based workplaces, but that you'll feel it in a way that's really applicable to your context right now. All right. So before we go into a first activity, which we're going to dive in really quick today, right into the experience, right into that work, I do want to give you a little snapshot of what we mean when we are talking about workplaces at their best. And that's kind of what this slide is right now. It reflects our global cross-sector community that's really just grown around this work and the impact it's had in many different contexts. So I also want to share that personally, I've had the privilege of helping to translate this work, the research, the theory, the real world practice that has gone on for many years into the incredible learning experience with the team here at VIA. And it's been a privilege, and I am so proud of it and what we've built together. And so I'm really excited that we get to share some pieces of it with you here today. And so with that, let's just go right into experiencing it. So we're going to begin with a short activity. This comes directly from our Workplaces at Their Best program. I see Tenelle, Marina, and Tom smiling a little bit because they are familiar with it. We use what we call essentially conversation starters. And I know sometimes when people hear a conversation starter, meeting starter, icebreaker, right, there can be like that kind of little internal groan that happens. But when these are done with intention, those moments can really create a container for psychological safety because they allow us to slow down and use a shared language of character strengths. And then we can start learning something truly meaningful about each other. So you're seeing one on your screen, and it's a prompt about leadership, which I always think is a fun one to get into because there are so many ways we can think about leadership. And at VIA, we define leadership as that ability to organize or encourage or influence or motivate others to achieve a goal together. So the question that's being posed is, for you, what additional strengths are important to use alongside leadership and why? And so Marina, Tenelle, and Tom, I'm going to ask you that question for the group in just a moment. But for everyone else, I want you to think about that. I want you to take a couple seconds and reflect on that. What strengths are important to maybe it's your leadership or important for you to witness within leadership? What helps you act in leadership? And then I know that Sarah's going to be looking at the chat and can let me know if there's anything that we can see. I think people might be popping it in.
Yeah, there's already some good stuff in here. Clarity, courage, humility as it helps to empower others,
Mm,
humor, which is one that sometimes might be overlooked to be paired with leadership,
yeah,
courage to make hard decisions.
I love that. And Sarah, actually, since you brought up humor, I'm actually going to shoot over to you, Tom, first. He already knew. I don't know if you saw the facial recognition when I said that. But Tom, I would love to ask you this question. What strengths or additional strengths do you think are important to use along
Ah,
leadership and why?
well, I'm going to double down on humor. I've run things, and one of the challenges people have, you get into a room and everyone's just so dang serious all the time, and you walk in and uh, you walk into a room with a reputation, and some people like, oh my God, you're intimidating, you're overwhelming, you're the boss, and I'm like, and a joke, I think, you know, obviously uh, in the zone of not overuse of jokes, not sarcasm, but absolutely puts people at ease and puts a smile on their face. And I think it unleashes creativity and zest.
All three of those, right? And that kind
Oh
of,
yeah.
yeah, that connection together. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. Marina, I'll come to you next.
I'm a little bit biased. I'm going to go for love because love is my top strength. So I'm going to go for that. But I think love is so important in the sense of, that whole broaden and build theory that allows us to think more broadly and then build our resources that we can draw on later. So for me, love, having that connection with our team is super important. And I think the other one for me would be perspective, that ability to kind of step out of the weeds, to zoom out and to see the bigger picture, I think is one that's really useful.
Yeah, so timely too. Right now, I think there's a really good conversation about love in the workplace and how it's actually can be so apt and so helpful, right? So thank you for that, Marina. And I might be biased too. It is my top strength as well. So who knows? Uh, and Tanel, please.
Yeah, I think I have a couple. I'm going to start with spirituality because if you are in this space of leadership, you want to make sure you stay connected to your purpose and also are able to help others stay connected to their purpose in the work that they do. I think that's very vital in terms of how to thrive. And the second one, or the second, third, and fourth one's going to be a lot with a three-factor model, and that's going to be self-regulation because we do need self-control as leaders. And I'm going to say also, for the caring part of that, kindness goes a long way. We all know that. And the third part of that inquisitiveness is curiosity. You want to be curious. You want to be able to ask the questions that are needed to help the people that you lead be successful and thrive.
Wonderful. What I really appreciate about each of your reflections is while they're different, they are connected, right? In the purpose, in the way that you move forward as a leader. And this is kind of part of the purpose of this activity. In workplaces at their best, we use those starters to, yes, help create psychological safe spaces, but it's really about how we start learning about each other in meaningful ways. When we can know the strengths that someone else values in leadership, for example, whether there's someone we lead or someone we work alongside or we're being led by. We just gain insights that we didn't maybe originally have. And so it helps kind of bridge that understanding, right? What matters to that person? How do they make decisions? What are they prioritizing? And what helps them feel respected and supported? And that awareness is really about building better understanding. And over time, that better understanding creates those safe spaces and more effective spaces. And so that's kind of the spirit of what we're carrying today, right? Is like, how can we experience this? How can we see it? And so I'm excited because we're actually going really in right away to our time with Marina, Tom, and Tanel. And so we're going to go ahead and move into these breakout spaces. But as you'll see on the slide, there are three breakout room options. Each reflects a different way that workplaces at their best shows up in practice, and each is going to be led by one of these practitioners. So in room 1, Marina Branigan will be focusing on team relationships and collaboration. Marina empowers individuals and teams to work with their strengths as a pathway to flourishing. She's known for her warm, practical style and for creating spaces where people can deepen self-awareness, strengthen connection, and navigate challenges together. She's an associate certified coach with the ICF, a certified strengths-based workplace consultant with VIA, and she's currently completing her MSc in applied positive psychology. If you're working with teams or you're navigating team or relationship dynamics, building trust, communication, this room could be especially salient for you. And then in room 2, we'll have Tenelle Anderson, and she'll be exploring coaching leaders for resilient teams in healthcare. I don't know if you just saw her little zest movement, but I loved it. Tenelle is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed addictions counselor, and a certified strengths-based workplace consultant with VIA. She currently serves as a program manager for the well-being clinicians within MUSC's Center for Workplace Wellbeing, and she works as a mental health and wellness expert. She's been working for more than 26 years supporting individuals and communities with courage, compassion, and resilience. So if you're in healthcare or supporting clinician well-being, or you're working in high-demand environments, this could be a very powerful space for you. In room 3, we have Tom Bagwell, and he's going to focus on leadership development across sales and marketing. Tom is the Vice President of Learning and Development at Grit Business Coaching, and he's previously served as the EVP for an international truck and Caterpillar dealer for 20 years, where his team earned recognition for both financial performance and environmental stewardship. He's a professor at Cal State East Bay. He's been honored 3 times as a Teacher of the Year. Just going to do a few snaps there. And with advanced degrees in business and applied positive psychology, Tom brings both rigor and practicality to his leadership development. So if you're working in sales, marketing, business development, or a revenue-focused role, this could be especially relevant for you. Now, before we move to the rooms, and Sarah's going to talk a little bit about the logistics of choosing the room you'd like to move into, I really want to invite you to take a moment and consider, what are you most curious about right now? Where does your work feel most closely aligned with? Or where's somewhere you might want to go to stretch or learn something new? There's really not a wrong choice here. You're going to...
It's just this quiet has descended, so I'm hoping that's a good sign. So we would get started. I want to say welcome to you all. I saw some people sharing in the chat in the main room where they were joining from, and it's lovely to see such a wide range of people joining. I'm joining from Ireland, if you didn't guess from my accent, and it's lovely to be here with you all. As we get settled into the session, I just want to ask you a question and maybe invite you to share into the chat. Which character strengths are you bringing into today's session? And you might be really familiar with your character strengths. You might know exactly which strength you're bringing in with you, but I also have shared a list of the 24 character strengths, if that helps. And as you're sharing there, I'll tell you that I'm bringing love of learning, because I know that I'm in a room full of people who have lots of experience, and I know that the conversations we have are going to give me lots of insights as well, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also bringing gratitude, because I'm grateful that you've all taken the time to be here today, and I'm grateful for your presence, so thank you for that. I'm seeing lots of love of learning, curiosity, humility, gratitude, curiosity, love of learning. So lots of different strengths there. And it's lovely to see that variety of strengths coming through from people. So thank you for sharing those. I came across strengths a number of years ago, and it changed the way I related to myself, and it changed the way I related to other people in a big way. And for the first time, I was starting to see the very best in myself and the very best in other people. And that obviously had a really positive impact in our relationships. So when VIA launched the first online version of Workplaces at Their Best around the end of 2024, I jumped at the chance. I said, here's a real opportunity to really deepen my learning and to help individuals and teams to be at their best together. So that's what brings me here today. In this breakout session, we are going to cover the importance of workplace relationships. And we're going to do that through a number of different lenses. So one of them is strength spotting. You might have heard of some of these before. Another area we're going to look at is strength synergies. We're also going to explore strengths collisions and the golden mean of strengths. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes to do that. So it will be quite a high level overview of them, but I'm hoping that you will get some value from that today. And of course, the last thing you want to do is sit here and listen to me talk for 20 minutes. That will be pretty boring. So I do welcome you to share in the chat. And if you're happy to come off mute, maybe to raise your hand and come off mute and share some of your insights, you're very welcome to do that. I would just ask you to be mindful of the fact that the session is being recorded. So please be mindful of confidentiality and treat this like a public space in terms of what you share. So we'll move on with a little question, which is, how important are relationships in your day-to-day work? So on a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 was not important at all and 10 was extremely important, how would you rate the importance of relationships in your day-to-day work? And again, if you want to put a number into the chat, just to give me a high level. Oh, I'm seeing lots of 10s. I see a 40. Very, very important. Brilliant. 8s, 9s, 10s. Super. Okay. So it looks like we're all in agreement that workplace relationships are pretty important. Workplace relationships, or relationships in general, are a key pillar of well-being, and there's a lot of research that supports the importance of relationships. They really do matter in the workplace. One of the longest running studies of adult development, the Harvard study in adult development, it's been running since 1938 and it's still ongoing today. And one of the key findings of that study is that as we age, one of the biggest indicators of our health and our happiness is the quality of our relationships. And because we spend an awful lot of time in work, our workplace relationships are obviously going to be pretty important. Other research shows that satisfaction with our workplace relationships is a predictor of our overall job satisfaction. So if there are parts of our work that maybe we are not so satisfied with, that could be compensated for by the fact that we have strong relationships. So all of this is pointing towards the fact that it's worth our time and our energy in building those positive workplace relationships. And one of the ways that we can do that is through this concept of appreciating and accepting others. And Via Character Strengths gives us this really beautiful language to do that, because it gives us this common language of strengths that we can identify and appreciate the very best in other people. And in the Workplaces at Their Best program, this practice is called strength spotting. So to do strength spotting, you would have built a base knowledge of your character strengths, and then there are 3 key steps to strength spotting. The first one being that we notice the good in others. Then we name the strength that we see. And finally, we share our appreciation for them. So I'm going to give you an example of that. So one of your colleagues, for example, offers a new idea to overcome a workplace challenge that you're facing. So noticing that is the first step, because oftentimes these things are happening in the workplace and we're so busy with other things, we don't even notice the good that's happening. So noticing is a key step to start with. And then we're into naming the strength that we see. So in this example, I thought, okay, maybe it's creativity in terms of they're exploring new ideas and offering creative solutions. And finally, then it's sharing appreciation. And you can do this in a way that feels really authentic to you. Like everybody will have a different terminology around this, but I suppose it's just an example to say, thank you for sharing your idea with us, Susan. Your creativity helped us find a way around the issue and we were able to move forward because of that. So 3 really, really simple steps to acknowledge and appreciate the other person. That appreciation is super important. There was a piece of research done in New Zealand back in 2015 on workers, and it found that those who felt appreciated in the workplace were 29 times more likely to flourish than those who didn't feel appreciated. So 3 very simple steps to have such a huge impact. So let's have a look at an example together. So Sam is a new member of the project team and is feeling unsure about the tools everyone is using. Terry notices this and takes the initiative to guide Sam through the setup, explaining each step clearly and patiently. Later that week, Terry checks in with Sam to see how things are going and to offer additional support if needed. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions here, and if you want to share in the chat, or if somebody wants to come off, Moxie, you'll be able to see if anybody raises their hand, and yeah, perfect. So what strength is Terry displaying, and how is Terry displaying that strength? So if we want to share in the chat, and again, if you want to come off mute, just raise your hand and Moxie will unmute you. Lovely. Okay, initiative, empathy, social intelligence, kindness and empathy, kindness and teamwork, curiosity. Yeah.
Grab
Kindness takes
yours.
time to help with Terry and checks in with him. Has somebody come off mute? Did somebody want to share?
Elsie, you're off mute. Did you want to share?
All right. We're all strapped. Fucking figured out.
It's accidental. But I'm seeing some lovely strengths come through in the comments here. Teamwork, leadership, teamwork and kindness. Anybody else have any more to share?
I don't see any hands coming up, so feel free to hop off of mute if you'd like to share. There's some really wonderful things in the chat.
Absolutely. Kindness and teamwork. I'm seeing a lovely range of strengths coming through there. Okay, so let's move on to the next one then. If you think of your own workplace, where have you seen somebody using a character strength? Where have you spotted somebody using that character strength? And again, very welcome to come off mute if you want to share, or feel free to share the chat. So where have you spotted that character strength? And as you're doing that, as you're reflecting on that, I'll spot a strength in my lovely co-pilot Moxie, who's here today, and I'm seeing Moxie's social intelligence in terms of minding the group, reading the room, seeing what the needs are in the room, and I'm really grateful to you for that, Moxie, so thank you. What other strengths are people seeing? What are you spotting in the workplace or in the people around you, or could even be a public figure, for example? Is there somebody out there that you see displaying a character strength? Celia.
Hi, good morning. I work in education. I'm the CEO of a charter school network and work closely with 3 principals. And our middle school principal recently sent out an email to her division thanking the team for their feedback on a mid-year culture survey. And some of that feedback was tough. I review it with her, and I think it was such an awesome display of humility and just transparency, like a commitment to not only proactively seeking the feedback, but being transparent about what the feedback is telling us, and then also, what her plan is in response. And, I think humility is the right word in terms of identifying the character strength. And I think in being, more human, right, in front of her team, it sort of invites others to recognize it's okay if there's still stuff that we're working on, together. Like, this is a safe place for us to have problems that we need to address, and we can do that together.
Absolutely. Gorgeous example. Thank you, Celia. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else like to come off mute and share? We've seen some gorgeous examples here in the chat. Love of learning, a colleague keen to take on a new challenge and develop their skills. Seeing strengths in the classrooms and leadership, working as a team in crisis.
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Hello, I'm hearing somebody.
Yes, it's Laura from Alberta, Canada. I just wanted to share a quick way to encourage strength spotting that has worked, and I've done this with thousands of people now, actually. Throughout many, many schools, I've had every single student and every single staff member complete the VIA character strengths. And when you walk into a building, I have all 24 character strengths as posters along the wall, and every single school picture, like everybody's school picture, is attached to their greatest strength to encourage inclusivity in strength spotting.
Gorgeous. That's lovely. Thanks for sharing that, Laura. Beautiful.
Then we have Celia with her hand up. Go ahead, Celia.
Celia's shared already. Have you seen it?
Yeah, sorry, I'll lower my hand. I apologize. Yeah.
Gorgeous examples of seeing people using those strengths. Thanks, Moxie. It's interesting, from the first example when we came into the room of asking you to share what character strengths you were bringing into today's session, and seeing the variety of the character strengths that came through there, and then the variety of strengths that we're spotting in people. It's indicative of a workplace, you know, that when people are coming in together and everybody's bringing their own unique strengths with them, that you're going to have all of these little interconnections between all of these strengths. And sometimes these strengths work really well together, and sometimes they can collide and cause a little bit of tension or conflict. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about that now. So strength synergies. Strength synergies are what happens when two or more strengths come together and they create an outcome that's greater than the sum of the individual strengths, we'll say. And strength synergies can happen on an intrapersonal level, so within an individual, or they could happen on an interpersonal level, so between two or more people. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. I was doing some strengths work with the team recently, and one of the ladies on the team had completed a business studies degree at night. And anybody who studied part-time knows that it's not part-time, right? It just means that you're really busy during the day and really busy at night. Two of her top strengths were love of learning and perseverance. And she had shared how when like exam time came, or she was due to, you know, submit assessments, that she was able to use that perseverance to kind of push her through to reach those deadlines, even when she was juggling all of the other demands of life. And I just thought it was a beautiful example of strength synergies in action on an intrapersonal level. On an interpersonal level, two examples could be social intelligence and teamwork. So you could have somebody who's really high in teamwork, who's really good at getting everybody together, and then a social intelligence could be, you know, somebody who's reading the room really well and understanding what makes people tick. So if you have two people who are high in those, you could create a really positive dynamic then, you know, for creating a positive workplace for people. So where do you see examples of strength synergies in your workplace? Where do you see strengths combining? Or even intrapersonally, you might see them in yourself, two strengths that work really well together. Anybody like to share a strength synergy? So two strengths that work well.
Hi, my name's Rachel. I'm an HR specialist at a university.
Right.
Hi. Strengths that I have seen that works really well together, and this is, I think, intrapersonally, is honesty and kindness. And also I think transparency can go into that as well. But I think that when giving feedback, if you're honest but kind in the way that you do it, it allows for more constructive conversations, and for easier development and trust building.
Yeah, that's lovely, and it leads in lovely to the next section, Rachel, so thank you for sharing that. Anybody else like to share? Creativity and perspective. Highly creative individual assists another, sharing data in a meaningful way that is accessible to people. Brilliant. Interpersonal love and social intelligence, curiosity and love of learning working well together. Perspective and leadership. Yeah, lovely examples there of how strengths can work really well together. And then on the other side of things, do we have somebody there? No.
Yeah, this is Ruben, and
Hello, Ruben.
intrapersonally, I think two things which complement within me is sense of meaning and perseverance. When you have sense of meaning to something which is larger, then I think you're able to challenge yourself, push yourself, and overcome obstacles and take things to conclusion.
Lovely. That's a lovely example. Thanks for sharing, Ruben.
Thank you.
Thank you. We move on then to the strengths collisions, because we were saying that, you know, every relationship will have conflict and tension, and all of those strengths that come together to create those beautiful synergies also have the potential to come together and create conflict and tension. And again, this can happen on an intrapersonal level, so within a single person, or on an interpersonal level. And I smiled when Rachel shared her example, because the two strengths that I chose here to give an example of for a strengths collision were honesty and kindness. And the reason I included those was because I see that in myself. So honesty will be one of my signature strengths and kindness will be quite high. But sometimes when it comes to having those difficult conversations, the honesty wants to be direct, and the kindness then can be overly concerned without, with not hurting people. So yes, they can work really well together and create these beautiful synergies, and they can also cause tension and conflict. And I'm really happy that you shared that example, Rachel, because I think it speaks to the nuance that's involved here with these strengths, on an interpersonal level, then we could have one person who is high in prudence and somebody who's high in bravery. So the person who's high in prudence might not like to take risks, for example, whereas somebody who's high in bravery might be more open to taking risks. And if they're working on a project together, for example, that could create some tension in terms of the pace at which they move forward. So I'm not going to ask you to share personal examples of strengths collisions, just because it's probably a more sensitive topic, but maybe conceptually, can you think of strengths that might collide? I'm seeing zest and prudence, they can be very different energies, absolutely. My other half is very high in zest, I'd be a little bit high in prudence, and we see that come to life on a regular basis. They can help balance each other out if they use social intelligence. Absolutely. And awareness is that first step, and it's looking at going, there's something happening here. You have a strength in this, I have a strength in that, and how can we honor both of our perspectives here? Humor and social intelligence. Yeah. Judgment and forgiveness. Kindness can cause issues if overused with a co-work with high honesty. Absolutely. So again, it's all context dependent, and it's just about being aware of the fact that this can happen. Moxie, can I do a quick time check with you?
Absolutely. I think we are down to our last minute or so.
Okay. Well, very quickly, I want to bring you into the golden mean, because this is all about looking at strengths and using the right strength in the right amount at the right time. And we're going to use this metaphor of a plant here to talk you through it. So if we underwater a plant, what's going to happen is our plant is going to wilt away. And I've real life evidence of many plants that have withered away because I forget to water them. But if we think of that in terms of strengths, for example, if we underuse perseverance, say, that could result in us maybe missing deadlines. But in the same sense, if we overwater a plant, that might not help it either, because it can bog it down, and again, overusing perseverance could look like maybe struggling to let go of something, when the right time is, and holding on. So what we're looking for is this golden mean. The right amount of water for the plant will enable that plant to thrive. And using the right amount of the right strength at the right time is really important in terms of cultivating these positive relationships. Excuse me. There is a handout on VIA's website that has the golden mean. Sorry, there's something wrong with my clicker here. It's not working for me. Maybe Moxie, if you can share a link to the golden mean, or I can add it in later when we go back to the room. But what
I will drop it into the chat.
Wonderful, thank you. So it'll give you the full list of the 24 strengths. It shows you what underuse of a strength looks like, what overuse of a strength looks like, and then that optimal use. And I suppose it's a case of always looking at that optimal use, that golden mean, in terms of how can we use this strength in the right amount at the right time. And if we take that perseverance as an example, somebody who's using the right amount of perseverance will complete to those deadlines, but knows when to let go of something. Okay, so maybe just a reflection for you, because I know we're quite tight in time now, is where might the overuse or underuse of strength cause tension or conflict in our workplace relationships? And then as we finish, and I'm hoping we don't get kicked out before we finish this, because we've covered a lot of topics today, and it's always lovely to learn these things, but the most important thing is what do we do with the learning afterwards? And I suppose my question for you is, what one small action can you take to strengthen your workplace relationships? And I'm going to give you a couple of ideas just for inspiration. You'll find one that works for you. You might decide to start your meetings with some strength spotting, for example. You might decide to consider strength synergies when planning your next project. Who on your team would work really well together to create a positive outcome? You might decide, if there's tension in a team, to name the strength collision and look at ways of moving forward that honours both sides. Or you could explore a strength that you were overusing or underusing and how you could move towards that golden mean. Okay, so maybe something for you to reflect on in terms of what step you're going to take forward. I know we're being called back to the main room, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to just say thank you to you all for joining me in today's session. I hope you found it valuable. I really appreciate my time with you here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back in the main room.
Thanks, Tenelle.
Okay, great. Let me get. Well, first of all, welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you are joining my talk. Really, I do a lot with leaders in a medical university, and so I'm going to just kind of talk about a portion of that. Please feel free to use the chat. Raise your hand if you have questions as I'm talking, or if you want to comment. I always tell people when I do workshops, like, this is a conversation. I'm not the only expert here. So please don't hesitate to join in. I'm used to Teams. I forgot how to use Zoom, but let me see if I can make sure I can get my screen shared here in a moment.
And Tenelle, while you're doing that, I'm just going to let everyone know, as Tenelle said, she loves to have the conversation. So if you just make sure that you raise your hand, if you've got a question or something, I can go ahead and take you off mute for those questions. Okay. So we can have that conversation as well. And Tenelle, do you have that share? Can you see that?
I can't see it. Can anybody else see it?
No. So the button at the bottom, do you see the more?
Yeah, it says share. Hold on one second. Let me try this now.
No problem. You have to double click it to share. Sometimes it's weird about it.
Um, okay, let's try this again. Everybody
This
still
is
with me? There we
everybody's
go.
with you.
Perfect.
There we go. It's working to know.
Great. You guys see the main screen?
Yep. We see it.
Awesome. So again, I'm here to talk about ultimately how do you live your best work life? How do you help others live their best work life? That is a trademark term that I've created in my years of work. And we're going to go through the next evolution of leadership development. And so really, how I integrate the frameworks, particularly talk about workplace well-being. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with workplace well-being, but typically it's the Stanford model, and we'll go through that a little bit, the levers of well-being, and then the Surgeon General's five essential components of workplace well-being. We'll talk about that. But the Stanford model are like these levers of well-being, the five essential or the human needs. And then I added when I became I kind of got interested in VIA before I became a consultant, like maybe a few years ago. But in a lot of the programming, I added the third framework to the programming that I use with leaders and teams, and that is the VIA Strengths, which is going to focus on identity and behavior. And so ultimately, as you can see there, my goal is to really teach leaders how to translate their strengths into the conditions around safety and respect, right? How do we matter? How do we show other people that they matter in the workspace? And then kind of that growth and that reciprocal feedback. So here's the arch, right? So here are the things that are woven, how I use values and actions to be woven through every phase. So self-awareness, and I want to just kind of talk a little bit about stress and why this is important. If you work in a high stress environment, or if you're leading others where there's this high intensity stress, we know that medical universities typically are going to have a lot of stress. There's burnout, there's moral injuries, there's grief and loss, there's trauma that oftentimes people are exposed to. And so, if you're not addressing stress and the impact of stress, and we know when we're stressed, there's three major things that's going to influence engagement, the way people are also communicating, and how they're taking care of themselves. And the first one is negativity bias, right? So Neuroscientifically, when you or your team are saying they're stressed, your body is in this state of, I'm in physical danger. So, a lot of what I do with these leadership arcs here, especially with self-awareness, is to be able to notice when you're starting to have that, and maybe even tapping into things like that self-regulation, which I'll kind of talk about a little bit more later. So, the negativity bias is important to understand if you are a leader and how to support your team, particularly in addressing chronic stress. The other component of that is going to be autopilot, right? So that's one of the reasons that mindfulness is really great work. And I know like mindfulness and values and actions are going to be exciting. And then the third component of that is irritability, right? So when people are stressed, they're irritable, they're not going to communicate well. And if you are a leader in that space, it's going to translate to your team. And so then you are going to have a lot of challenges in this space, right? So self-awareness is where I get them to kind of identify some patterns of what they're going through, practice regulation, that physiological regulation, that emotional awareness, what's happening with their body, becoming curious. And so that curiosity, like what can you know, what can you learn about the space when you're experiencing stress as a leader? How do you also be curious about your team members when they're going through stress and how to support them? Then we tap into those strengths, and I'll show you a little bit more of I kind of created my own, like what VIA strengths would look like if you're using them as a leader. And then obviously, as a leader, there's always going to be courageous conversations that you have to have with your team around accountability, maybe other things that need to be discussed. Maybe you work in a team and there's some conflict and you have to help people navigate that. And psychological safety is such a huge component of workplace well-being. I usually describe it as safety being, hey, as a leader, how are you making people feel secure around changes, particularly in healthcare? There's a lot of changes that happen, and for some reason, people struggle with that. And so, how do you talk about those changes? How do you allow your team to express their concerns or feedback about those changes? The other part of that psychological safety is autonomy. Like how do you support your individuals coming to work, feel like they can do the job, they understand the job, because that's really important. We were talking about this yesterday in terms of engagement. Most people might become disengaged if they really don't understand the job or the expectations of what the job is supposed to do and how it's connected to the bigger picture. So being able to definitely help them understand the why of the work and the why of a change if you're having to present those changes. The other part of that psychological safety is fairness. Fairness is also one of our wonderful values and actions character strengths. So how are you being fair in the space that you are leading with your team, with your teammates? The E is esteem. How are you making people feel good about the work that they do? We know that mistakes are going to happen, right? How do you use those mistakes as learning opportunities? Again, that appreciation of beauty and excellence, but also that love of learning. How are we initiating that in our spaces together? And the T is trust, right? Everybody talks about trust. I like to talk about trust differently. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, so I do a lot of couples counseling and relationship. And so I try to distinguish trust in that space of your personal trust with people, but professional trust. Because sometimes we show up at work, we want to trust each other like we might trust our partners, and that I think that trust can get in the way of growth and change, particularly if something does happen in healing. So really understanding that question around like how are we defining trust in our team. And then the why of safety is just people being able to be themselves. If, as a leader, do you help encourage that, right? Can people show up as themselves, be authentic, no matter what age they are, no matter what background they come from? That's a really important part. And I always like to break down psychological safety because I know sometimes there's different definitions, but that's how I define it when I work with teams. But ultimately, team members being able to ask questions in a large setting and not feel like they are being penalized because they do have questions about a decision that you are making as a leader. And all that, hopefully, as you're understanding that and your team and you're creating this safe space, then you guys are developing these habits around your values and actions, your purpose, and creating these systems that's going to help everybody thrive. So I'll kind of pause to see if anybody has anything. I know I kind of talk fast. It's a lot to put in 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So any questions or thoughts?
Danelle, I was hoping that you would maybe talk a little bit more. There were some really beautiful gems in there, and I was hoping you'd talk a little bit more about how specifically you cultivate that part of finding their why or finding, like honoring mistakes, like you named. It's really great to be able to do that, but like, how do you do that, and how have you cultivated that with others when you're working with them?
Yeah, so usually what happens is maybe a leader or a team or a director will reach out and say, "Hey, I'm kind of curious about the support you can give my team." One of the first things I do is I have a consultation with the leader. I ask the leader questions around what's going on, what are their core strengths, what are the strengths of the team. So I'm gathering information and data, assessing kind of the patterns that might exist in that space, which is going to be helpful for me to, again, create a program that's individualized to the leader that I'm working with and their team. And so I forgot the other part of the question that you asked me, Alicia.
No, 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 that's great. So I heard like a very specific strategy, right? Which
Yeah.
is that kind of first initial meeting to
Yeah.
talk to them. Yeah. And then I kind of asked you too. So it's not you to know. I said, how do you honor mistakes, right? But I also asked, how you cultivate that why.
And so the second part of that, once I do a leadership consultation, most likely there's going to be some rounding. I call it well-being rounding. I've created 5 different sets of questions. So kind of based off of what the leader is telling me is the themes, then I go in or my team goes in and we round on every individual in that team to get their perspective as well about some of the patterns that's going on. If they are like, I don't know why I'm here, that helps me know, okay, we need to start with the why. Some teams I go in and they're like, they love their job, they love what they do, but maybe the leader just they don't feel supported by the leader. And so that gives me additional information to be able to, as you see here, this leadership arc and how to navigate the supporting that leader and giving them more one-on-one consultation. And then again, and also involving the team because the team has to be a part of it as well. So that's usually what I'll do in that space. So here you'll see again, kind of from that assessment to daily leadership behaviors and making it more observable. So what I mean by this part is right. I'm going to focus on overuse or underuse. How does stress distort values and actions as a team too? Because when teams experience things like maybe there's a patient death, maybe there's a medical error, maybe there's a moral injury that just showed up in terms of administration. What we see maybe in America's administration around what doctors can and can't do and how they can treat patients. And so sometimes that's going to impact team members. And so we know that if that is showing up, then they might not use their stress or their strengths the way that they want to really use them. So really understanding that. Um, I want to kind of go back because I've been look at the bottom. If you can see, these are some of the questions I might ask. So this question in your most stressed moment last week, what did your team experience from you? That's again around a lot of that self-awareness so they can say, oh gosh, when I'm stressed, I kind of avoid my team or I don't really do, I kind of do this. I might ask, how have you used your strengths? Are there some that you feel like you underuse? And that again is going to help understand how to address their daily behaviors, their leadership behaviors.
And now we
Here's
have
something.
oh,
Oh,
sorry
yeah,
to
go ahead.
interrupt you. I was going to
No.
say we had a couple questions in the chat,
Oh,
so wanted to highlight them and I wanted to name that John named mistakes are expected and respected. What did you learn? So I think offered a cool question, right? And then I apologize. I think Mofonino. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. How do you work under a leader that does not embrace the strength of a team member?
very good question. So, oftentimes I think there's something that may have happened. And so that's where I use my expertise as a relationship expert to kind of maybe understand the dynamics. And so there can be healing work in that space, right? So, and I think that that comes from that psychological safety of trust. Maybe they don't respect the strengths because they might feel like this person is trying to undermine their leadership. So that's where we have those courageous conversations. And I bring everybody in. I meet with everybody individually, and I bring them in, and I'll ask a question like, "What's most important to you?" This is where I also use a lot of curiosity and help them become more curious about the other person. And as we talked about yesterday, with hope, what are you hopeful for? What are the outcomes that you guys want if you want to stay in this space? Again, tying that back to the larger mission, Medical University of South Carolina's larger mission, that what are we here to do and why are we here to do it? And sometimes that I find that that's very helpful. But I will also tell you that sometimes I tell people just for your own well-being, you don't have to always kind of force a fit. If this is not something that's working for you, and if it's not working for that person, it is okay to sometimes just say, this is not the space for me, and how to take care of yourself. And so there might be times where I'm helping a leader or a team member navigate that transition as well. But ultimately, it's just definitely teaching that perspective because I think sometimes when people are in relationships or they're communicating and we talk about empathy, most people think, I just want you to understand me. But I'm like, you can understand a person but not agree. And I think what people really want to happen is for somebody to agree with them. Um, and so there's a lot of educating when I'm communicating or helping a leader communicate with a team member if there's conflict around the concepts of empathy, compassion, which comes after empathy, and then that compassion and accountability, because as a leader, you have to still be able to hold that person accountable to what they are there to do. And how do you do that in a compassionate way? And so, really, just a lot of coaching around those conversations. So, great question. Thanks.
Tenelle, so we do have a few more questions, and I realized that while we said you could raise your hands, everyone, actually, if you want to ask that question, you can. So come off mute. So if that, I think the next person is Shauna.
Hi,
Um, so,
Shana.
so Shauna, I'll pull you off mute if you want, but you can also ask that question out loud if you want.
Good morning. Tenelle, thank you. I was curious how you use stress coping signals, flight, fight, freeze, and fawn to kind of help guide into the strength alignment. Your consulting question did give me an example and insight into how you kind of navigate that, but I just wanted to bring that to light.
Oh, yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah, obviously, again, there's a lot of understanding what stress is. And I try to also, if I'm tapping into self-regulation, I usually too, well, Shauna, have people try to connect to their emotions because that's a space that, at work, we want to avoid those emotion words. And most time people will say, I'm stressed when what they really feel is helpless or hopeless or overwhelmed, particularly in the medical setting. And so giving voice to those emotions is also a really great form of self-awareness and self-regulation and noticing what's happening in the body and how to use kind of components of mindfulness-based stress reduction to decompress and to recover as needed after those moments, those pauses. And I teach people how to do that during the workday because I think most time people think, oh, I'll go home and take care of myself. So a lot of the work I do is nope. You have to be able to do it here. You have to be able to do it all day long. And here's how to do it. So yeah, great question.
I
Thanks.
really appreciate that. My background is industrial organizational psychology, and it's all about bridging the like human aspects into business strategy. So I thank you so much for bringing emotion into business spaces.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think we had another question in Takanisha. I apologize again also if I
No,
say
you're
anyone's name
good.
wrong.
You
Okay.
said it right. Thank you.
Okay,
My,
beautiful.
my question is, I'm working with a clinician who's a leader, and she's experiencing or demonstrating signs of burnout, but she's not self-aware. So how do I address that with her? Because she's the leader of this team. And so everyone is experiencing it based on how she leads. And I don't know how to approach it with her.
Great question. So sometimes I always go with maybe not necessarily addressing the burnout first, but maybe what's like going back to that curiosity, what's important to you? Tell me the vision you have as a leader. How has that vision and your behavior shifted based on the last couple of months and what's happening? And
Mhm.
that might then create that space of self-awareness, right? I think too, sometimes labels can, if you know, if you say, "Oh, you're burned out," people might
Right.
not respond to that because I don't really. I know burnout is such a important term. I usually say if I identify as burned out, what my mind is telling me that I can't become unburned because what do you burn down or what do you burn,
Mhm.
can become unburned. So I do think language is so valuable in how we ask people questions. That's why curiosity is, I think, it is one of my top strengths.
Okay.
Um, to really get people to focus on the strengths aspect of things, maybe moving away from that negativity bias, which if they're
Mhm.
already stressed, they're not able to see themselves as doing anything great. And so if you're consulting, let's start there. What are the great things you have done? What more would you like to add to that? And then what's getting in the way of that? Is it
Okay.
the way you're caring for yourself? Is it a lack of resources? Because a lot of times, particularly in medical universities, it's a lot of efficiency that
Right.
impact workplace well-being, systems that probably need to be changed, resources that they don't have. So that's really hard.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And
You
while
know,
y'all still talking, kind of show you guys just kind of some things that I created here that I might use with leaders around the different via character strengths and how you would use that as a leader in a space in addition to leadership strength. So, and I'm still taking questions.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Tanel? We have about 5 minutes left in our grouping, so want to make sure that we give space to you for any of those thoughts you might have.
Yeah, hop in. I always go off script. We don't have to go through these slides. You guys can just ask me questions. But here again is this, if you're not familiar with the Surgeon General's five essentials, I just put these here for you to kind of have more information around, right? That protection from harm. As a
cool.
leader, here are the behaviors. Here's what you're going to focus on. I added some values and action levers. How do you leverage the protection from harm using these specific values and actions? As you can see there under each one. And then a consultation question that I might ask is which essential is lowest right now for you and your team, and what one leader behavior would raise it? So
And
if I'm
Tanel,
doing consultation and coaching, that's a question. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I did not
No,
mean to
don't
interrupt
say
you.
sorry.
Samin asked if you would mind putting up the list before backup.
Yeah,
And I'm
sure.
sure we can also send that out if you're comfortable with that, Tanel.
Yeah. I'll email it to you, Alicia. Alicia.
Okay, perfect. And then Sharif asked, saying, I'm coming from leading teams in high tech. One of the most common behaviors I see is what I call the cult of the hero. Heroes may save the day, but they cause resentment for others. They burn themselves out. We try not to encourage this behavior, but once senior leadership rewards it, they find that the problem can escalate or cascade. Have you noticed anything like that to know for yourself?
Yeah, there's so many different like layers, and I think IS is such a huge backbone of a lot of organizations. We call it IS, information support, but IT, and the tasks that they have to do. And I think because so many people do crave that acknowledgement, they want to feel like they matter at work, they might go above and beyond for that appreciation, that praise. And some people who might be low key might become bothered by that. And I think if you as a leader, if you're kind of creating this culture in your meetings around that, right, that's a part of that psychological safety um, where you're able to acknowledge people, to also talk to that individual, particularly if what they're doing is causing burnout for them or the team is being overwhelmed. That's where that if you are creating a culture with psychological safety, that's where you can have those open, honest conversations with the team. Tell me more about what's happening here. What is it that we really want to be going on if this is something that's challenging us right now? So if you can, and I will help leaders be able to do that. Some leaders are very fearful of having conversations because they don't like conflict. I think conflict is a great way to continue to grow. So if they struggle with the navigating some of those team dynamics, then that's where a lot of my work will go with them in doing some of the one-on-one. And as you can see here, if they kind of say, well, yeah, I'm struggling with the mattering at work with some of my team members, then we'll talk about how to raise that using their values and actions. Good question.
I think actually kind of related to Nell is that the question was, how do you handle a dominating leader when somebody might be really afraid to talk before them? And that's from Jay Asheri.
Oh yeah, great. There's so many dominating leaders, I think. And I think you can be dominating and effective. It just depends on how you want to dominate. And I think that's the part of bringing it back to that self-awareness of getting that individual to really explore why is leadership important for them? You know, what is it about you wanting to be in this role? How does the domination of your team, right? How does the domination of your team really help you guys win? I use a lot of analogies. So one of my common ones is always going to be football. Um, and so I'll talk to them. I'm like, okay, so if your team is not performing well and you're leading in this way, then it's time to maybe look at how you need to restructure things. And it's okay to, and I'll usually, if a leader is able to recognize that and take accountability, I will encourage them to come back and have a conversation with their team and say, hey, I haven't been doing this at my best, and own that, take that accountability, because I think that shows so much trust and growth for that leader and the team. But ultimately, it's always going.
Try to answer those questions.
Hey, Tom, I'm here too, just so you know.
Okay.
Any technical support or anything like that, I'm here.
All righty. Well,
everything is okay. Thank you.
All right. So if you have any questions you want me to bring up, like try to address or bring up, my background in sales, I was a fully commissioned salesperson for years. I was also ran a multi-billion-dollar marketing department, and I actually teach marketing and been a professor of marketing for 20 years. And the super cool stuff is, I don't know, maybe strengths is my hammer because every problem seems like a nail. And I literally just apply. I have my students start off with strengths. And I don't even care if they're teaching a marketing class. I start them off with strengths at the very, very beginning. And the way I'd like to bring in on the sales side is, you think about, the energy level that we have, right? If you look at sales, how many people, just raise a hand? I actually live off of audience participation on this kind of stuff. Raise your hand. And if you go out there and like sales, I don't wake up in the morning and love to do sales. Anybody? All right, awesome. Yeah, I get that. And I fully appreciate that. And I remember when I was starting out, I was like, I didn't know why anyone would ever buy from me. Because when I started this off like 30 years ago, I was young back then. And it seemed like everybody bought from their friends. And I wasn't anybody's friends, and I wasn't in the network, and I couldn't understand why anyone would want to buy from me. And at that particular point in time, I realized that, at least on the strength side, it's like, well, wait a second. What I did, I would say absolutely use perspective and critical thinking at that time. Those are not my signature traits, so I'll just try to lean into them at this particular point. And what I did is, my dad's company was seized by the IRS when I was in college. So I went to UC Berkeley. I worked my way through school. And right before I had to pay tuition, his company was seized by the IRS. And I didn't have any money. And so that part of it became very, very important to me about, well, wait a second, when I'm helping customers, and I think this is the big one, when I'm helping customers, am I genuinely helping them? And which is when I talk to them, am I actually putting their interest at heart? And so that's where empathy came in. And so I always pitch stuff because a lot of times people say, well, can you tell me what they wanted me to quote something very similar to what they already had. And I always had to do that because I didn't want to like be presumptuous and just assume that what I wanted or what I thought was better than what they asked me for. And I asked permission on the way and said, hey, here's what you asked for. And based on our conversations, I'd love to share a few things that might consider where I think it might be useful for you. And if it isn't, can you teach me so that when I come back and I talk to you again next time, I understand a little bit more? When I had the two quotes, and it's amazing to have like that, you think one is it's the humility of I'm doing what you asked me to do, and then the other side of it is it's about being beneficial to the greater good. And I kept on doing that process, and I also leaned into expertise. So, and with if you want on this kind of stuff, I don't mind talking to people. I love talking to people. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I can talk to you about how to do it, but it's how to become the expert in your field. There's a way to do that. It's not hard. And because when you think about it, when people hire people, I don't want to be too dismissive. In sales, it's a contact sport. It's a little hard. And part of this, the challenge is people don't really want to do business with rookies. That's been my experience. They want to have people who have a been there, done that attitude, and the ability to leverage your strengths, your experiences, your core values to your purpose and meaning in life. That's where I win. That's where I absolutely win. And the ability to go out there. So if you look at my core strengths, one, humor absolutely helps me in sales. And if it's not one of your strengths, don't try to be funny. It's do the stuff that you're really, really good at. You know, it's not about having strengths envy. You know, I look at some of the other people like, I wish I was more honest. You know, it was, but maybe it's not so highly valued in sales. Maybe there's it's in the middle. It's not necessarily a top one. What's in the top for me is spirituality, meaning, and purpose. And what I do is I actually genuinely want the best for the people that I talk to. So even in a group of relative strangers here, I'm like, hey, connect with me. I'm not going to charge on that. Don't worry about that. I'm in a good spot. And I want to help people that are trying to improve themselves in their lives. And that ability to tap into what makes you you is an incredible gift. So one of the exercises I actually do with my clients, and you look at like all the things in sales and marketing, and I call it smarketing because they're the same thing. It's the same damn thing. A salesperson is a marketing department of one. They're marketing themselves. That's all it is. It's the same stuff. So there's prospecting. There's what we call the strategically valuable target customer. It's like, who is that customer? And don't just talk about it generally. Use a name. Take a name of like this customer is absolutely representative of a larger group that I can serve. But what happens is one customer has a name, one customer has a need, one customer has a story, one customer has that. And if you can actually see it in your head, then you can take what's here and drop it into your heart. So you go out there and talk to people about, hey, how can I be of service of what I got? Now in marketing, it's not about just giving away for free. It's not about giving. So there's a creation of value. Then you got to communicate it and you got to capture it. This is not, I'm in a little, I'm in a good spot. Yes, I do. Maybe I'm the Robin Hood of character strength because I charge the people that have a lot of money. And I'll help people that are trying to use the strengths. And that ability to go out there and target and capture that value is what it's about. Now, in this sales story, there's a sales trailer. Here's the question you need to ask. And I've actually done this. I've taken classes in sales management and the sales rep. I actually have a sales leadership academy, which is a 12 one-hour training session. This week, I talk about how to leverage your strengths when talking to a customer. So imagine yourself at the ubiquitous Starbucks line, and it's a long line, and you say hello to the person next to you, or they say hi, and you ask a question, what do you do? Now, in that question is unbelievable insight. You could actually slam it and say, oh, I'm a leadership coach. Well, I don't need that. Or you can actually go out there. The whole idea of sales, especially in this field, is the conversation. It's the building of a relationship. And the stuff that we talk about in most business relationships, it's about trust. People do business with people they like. People do the business with people they trust. People do business with people they respect. So what happens is that a lot of rookies or inexperienced salespeople just try to jump to the order. It can't do that. It's asking the question of, why do you do what you do? And so when I'm out there, it's like, well, guess what? I help companies. I help people become stronger in their personal and professional lives. We go out there, and my core belief is, hey, you know what? If we're trying to increase profits, if I'm talking to a CEO and I'm saying if we're trying to increase profits, great. Are you ready? Because it's going to take a lot of work. And the work it's going to take is about the ability to go out there. Can we engage the employees? Can we actually have the employees focused on serving the customers? Because if you had engaged employees and loyal customers, that allows us to absolutely, you're going to have a good business. So in sales and marketing, it's understanding who you are at your core. What are your own strengths? And have a story about each of them. If you have a story about your character strength, your top ones, hope and spirituality. I shared a story about my dad's company going out of business. So why am I in front of a CEO? Because there's nothing I can do about my dad, but there's everything I can do about your companies not ever being in that situation. That's hope. That's optimism. So tying in your strengths to your story makes you more credible, makes you more impactful, makes you more trustworthy. Have people separate you from off the page on it. The issue for people coming forward is understanding the strengths and the values. What are your core values? Those two align with what you do and how you approach your work makes a big difference. So when you look at trying to divide up your work, on the sales and marketing side, prospecting, qualifying, the actual, handling the pitch or overcoming objections, each of those can be applied with a strength as long as it's customer focused and there's a customer orientation to it. Any questions so far? Raise your hand if you have a question. Okay. So what happens on this kind of stuff is when you're talking in sales, if you jump too fast, you're not listening. You're considered sort of being pushy. It's the ability to go out there and a big skill that increases respect is playback. And, playback with empathy is the best one. So when you go out there and it's like, oh, so Mr. Customer, what I hear you're saying is you got X, Y, and Z. Is that right? Okay. Here's another way of looking at it. Here's some solutions. And what happens is rather than, if you look at yourself as an expert, it's about being able to go in there and doing what's right for people and giving them options. So I'm going to have a hard and fast rule. Never only have one quote. That doesn't work. You need to have two quotes. Okay. The first quote is what you think is the absolute, if you're talking in sales and marketing, you want the high level, this is the full bang. And it's got to be genuinely of service and of use to the customer. It's got to have pros and cons. It's got to have the good stuff that is going to be useful. And sometimes that's just not maybe it's too much or not the right time. And what happens is if you've done a good job of establishing rapport and establishing the relationship with people, they would say, you know what, that's okay, let me think about it. That's like that's the death of a sales call, right? Let me think about it. And so what happens like, well, if you can't do that, here's another option. And what happens, that's considered a reciprocation of concessions. That ability to go out there and say, oh, well, if you can't do that, can you do this? In fact, it worked. I teach this stuff, and I was working with a person who's like an AI expert, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking of I would love to have an AI coach, and he goes, oh, well, I have a package for that. I went, oh, really? And he goes, yeah, it's 4 2-hour sessions for $9,000. I was like, that's fantastic. I said, congratulations. That's a little bit higher than I was willing to pay on it, but I'm so excited that you're able to command those rates. Good job, excellent work. It's really nice to know that I have good taste. but but I may have caviar dreams, but I got a Budweiser budget. So that ain't going. He goes, well, if you can't do that, I have a small community forum that's about $140 a month. And if I was just thrown out the $140 a month, I would have thought that was high, but compared to 9,000, it was a bargain. So guess who signed up for the community? That was me. And what happens is that ability to have multiple options, then you don't get trapped. Here's the thing, if you come back next week, it's considered a whole new negotiation. And it's considered a new framing. That's not what you want to do, especially if you've done a good job of establishing the relationship, the rapport, by understanding the needs and the problems. You got to think about what you're having to offer. Is it a vitamin or a painkiller? And in the world of strengths on it, we get a little bit overweighted in the area of fear. What Mark Twain said. Bad news is halfway around the world before good news gets its shoes on in the morning. And so the issue is when you look at when you start asking the questions, you don't want to ask. A rookie would say, "What keeps you up at night?" That's a rookie question. It's a rookie. Where you want to go is, tell me where you're headed. What walls are you up against? Who's involved in this? Who's in this flow of decision making that you need to figure this stuff out? What happens if you don't do it? Because the number one thing is not necessarily going with a competitor, it's not doing anything at all. And you can ask people, it's an intelligent question. I call them IQ questions, intelligent questions, which is about, hey, what's the cost of doing nothing? Could you wait? And then what happens is it sort of puts them in a position of asking like, well, no, I can't wait because I'm on this call and I'm trying to make a decision. And I'm like, okay, so right. So waiting's not an option. What's the next best option? And just facilitating the conversation, because here's the thing. And when you have authority, expertise, you're not trying to sell anything. I'd rather have people trying to buy than trying to sell someone something. So that buying orientation is a customer orientation. The customer orientation is about helping them solve their problems and their needs. And that's with laying out an option, 2 options, or 3 options, never an option, but a couple, 3 options. And if you think of yourself as a doctor in that area, then it's really about going out there and, can you imagine a doctor trying to just push a procedure? They don't do that. They go out there and they say, hey, this is the next course of action. This is what's going on. This is what we need to do. The other thing to think about on the sales is people cannot read your mind. People are horrible mind readers. So there's an inability to go out there and actually, you got to lay out what the next steps are, because it may be super obvious to you. It is not obvious to someone who isn't regularly doing business with you or knows what the next process is. So just laying out like, hey, so option A is this, and if you like option A, then this is the next step. Option B is this. If you like option B, here's the next step. You just lay it out as a matter of fact. It's not like, oh no, here's the close. I'm closing. In good sales, if your belief is I'm generally being of service to the other customer, it just changes all the tension in the room. I don't want anyone buying anything from me if it's not in their best interest. What kind of human being would I be? But if you go out there and you actually have tremendous empathy because you listen to what the customer's issues are and what the problems are and what they're facing, and you actually go out there and you craft this a couple options of ways forward, that's not being pushy, that's being helpful. So in the framing of our work, that's my spirituality and hope and optimism. In the framing of this work, tapping into your strengths of saying, how can I be of beneficial use to the person on the other side of that equation? Am I being good? That's what I teach my marketing students. And I teach them how to tell them their story, and I have them teach them how to tell your own story. What is the difference between values and strengths? Well, first off, that's a great question. The strengths and values, strengths is how we do things. I like the original word via character. So it's the website. It's values in action, which I really, really like because that's when we operationalize. Now, there's some values that are not necessarily actioned, but that alignment of values with actions. Every strength is a value. That's true. I think it's one of those Venn diagrams where not every value is a strength, at least not one of the 24 character strengths. Because, and then align that with purpose, which is asking the question, why do you do what you do? Here's the thing that makes it very, very important in terms of driving. One, the stuff when we look at on those different things, like prospecting, oh my gosh, I hate prospecting. I hate reaching out. I hate calling customers. And then you tie it up over here with, well, what strength could I use? Curiosity, right? Hope and optimism. Those are the kinds of things you need out there. And it's like, well, wait a second. It's not about trying to win everything. It's about trying to be useful to the people that need to know us. I truly am convinced, and it's a mindset thing. I truly am convinced that I can help people out. Not everyone, but if in a 10-minute conversation, I am truly convinced that in a 10-minute conversation that we will quickly decide how important working together would be. And that's not something I have to fake. I believe it in my heart. And aligning, you have something, Richard? You can unmute.
If I may, yes, having it in your heart. I've been in B2B sales for more years than most of the folks on this screen are alive. But two of my signature strengths are zest and honesty. So what I've discovered over these years, enthusiasm sells. That's how my zest comes out.
Yeah.
It just is there. But I was going to, now I lost my whole train of thought.
That's being honest.
Yeah, that's something that I just do. Our attitudes walk 10 feet in front of us.
Yeah.
So if we're not feeling right, don't pick up the phone and make a call, because that person on the other end is going to know it. And when you walk in the room, if there's somebody standing, sitting at a desk, and you're not up to par and you have an issue and it's affecting your attitude, they're going to know that. And it is going to be not good for them or for you. And one of the things you mentioned early on about building rapport and getting to the KLT, the know, like, and trust, that could take 5 times to visit somebody to get that done. And as you mentioned, rookies expect it to happen instantly. It does not happen instantly. I'm done. Thank you.
No, thank you. No, that's wisdom there. I remember when I was, I go into sales, people marvel at the level of energy I got, and that I think zest is important. I remember doing a walk around. I was used to sell trucks. I did a walk around and I hit the grill so hard on the truck, I started bleeding on my hand. And I kept on walking around, and I was like, and then there's the mirror, and then there's that, and there's that. And what was absolutely fascinating was he pulled me away and he took me to the their little emergency medical kit, and he was like, if I had people as passionate about you, my business would be on fire. And what happens is people want to know that you care about their business. And if you understand the language, I call it being bilingual. So you think about different people. If there's more than one decision maker, you got to understand that everyone has a different interest in you of what they're looking at. And it's not trying to be one thing to one person. It's about understanding like, hey, here are the pros and cons. I would admit, here's a wonderful book if you want to really get started in this area. A wonderful book is called Influence. Highly recommend that book if you haven't read it already. I'll stick it in it's Influence by Robert Cialdini. I had to read it for three different degree programs at Berkeley, Penn, and Chicago. And it's a core of what I teach. And there's 6 principles of influence: reciprocity, consistency, liking, scarcity, social consensus, authority are the principles. And what happens is, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, it'd be great. I could tell you, and I could share with you. I have sort of like a manual on how to apply strengths and values and identities to sales. And it's absolutely it's a critical part, because here's the thing: it's an inside job. And that belief system that we're talking about, that belief system that we have about, we walk into a room, are you displaying confidence? Where you lacking confidence, you're not playing to your strengths. That's where we have an imposter syndrome. We're trying to be something we're not. For me, I like to make people.
You may be thinking about how you might want to use some of the suggestions that were just brought up, some of the ideas, some pieces of conversation that you might have got from other people and other folks in the room with you. And that's great. That's what we want. And what I want to do is give Marina, Tom, and Tenelle a little space, one more time to just say, if you all had everyone leave with one takeaway or one insight today, what would you want that to be? And so I don't want to popcorn on any of you. Whenever you're ready to start or share that, I invite you to share.
Yeah, I'll go first. I have kind of 3 takeaways that I wasn't able to get to really, but strengths are behavioral forces. If you are coaching, you can help calibrate. The goal is to help individuals calibrate them under stress, because if you can use your strengths when you're stressed, then you can use them in any other space. The other thing is leaders create conditions. So going back to kind of this 5 targets, those 5 essentials that target that condition. And then finally, well-being is a system. And so if you're able to understand the system that these leaders work in, then you can help them choose the right strength lever to address those challenges and opportunities.
Beautiful. No, you had it. You were like, I was ready. Not surprised.
I'll share what was interesting in my session was we were looking at strengths, synergies, and collisions. And the example of love and kindness came up for both, actually, which was really interesting. And I suppose it spoke to the nuance of the context and the situation and the people that are involved, and how we can navigate all of that. I thought that was really interesting. And I suppose it's just to reiterate the importance of relationships. And I suppose, to quote Chris Peterson, other people matter. And that for me is it sums up the relationship and the importance of relationships beautifully.
So true, Marina. We love that quote at VIA, right? Other people matter. If it comes down to that, that just helps us navigate it all. And I just would add to that, Tenelle named, that curiosity to understand, right, each other. So I think those are so interconnected. Thank you.
To shorten it, I believe in opium too, and which is other people matter. It's the best drug that's out there, and the ability to go out and in sales and marketing, which is what we were talking about, playing to your strengths taps into authenticity because that's you at your best. And it also does a second thing because sales and marketing can be super hard, is it taps into discretionary energy. So you think about the typical energy that we would have when you actually play to your strengths, your energy is not a set amount of energy. If you're playing to your weaknesses or your lesser strengths or if you feel awful, you have this much. There's people who can't get out of bed in the morning. But when you play to your character strengths, your signature strengths, your energy expands a lot. And that's kind of what's needed in sales and marketing.
I really appreciate that too, Tom, because I'm not sure that everybody always thinks about that element, right? Or that aspect of it. But it's so critical and what all three of you said, right? That kind of thread that connects everything is that it's people at the heart of everything we do. And if we can remember that and remind ourselves of that, then we can navigate any challenges, right? Any joys out there, all of those pieces, and we can navigate it in a way that feels good, that feels like what we do matters, and we can get good things done, right? So I super appreciate you for all of the wisdom. I did want to name that we were going to do one more, takeaway activity today. And so I would invite everyone to go ahead and we can do this together. It is something you can kind of apply, apply immediately. Sorry about that. And so it is called Strengths Alignment. And if you might be familiar with it from Ryan Nemec's Character Strengths Intervention book. But in Strengths Alignment, we ask you to do three main things. And so I'm going to actually ask that one of my colleagues, Moxie John, helps us out with this too. And so this activity is going to be first asking you to think about a task at work that tends to energize you. Something that you find is enjoyable, you get energy, you find enjoyment from it. Maybe it really activates just those feelings of positive, aspects at work. And so I'm going to ask you to think about that for a second. And maybe it brings out, as Tom said, your best. What feels at your best. And so, Moxie, would you be willing to share an example of an energizing task for you?
I would be happy to. For me, it is anything to do with event planning because I can connect with the end user. And I love that. I love that face-to-face interaction and seeing the power of what I do behind the scenes, like how it actually makes impact and empowers people.
Yeah, I can, as someone who works closely with Moxie, you can see that, the joy on her face, the light on her face. So I want you to think about that for you. What resonated? What was something that brings a little bit of joy to you? And then the second part of this is to think about what character strengths come alive for you when you're doing that task. So Moxie, what strengths for you come alive when you're doing that event planning and you're thinking about the end person at the end of the day?
I think there's a lot of love in there and zest, and also creativity. I love to be able to approach things from different angles and thinking about what will have the best impact on the end user.
Yeah, I love that. I hear all the ways that your strengths are connected there and help you support. And so then I would ask everyone, I want you to think about shifting this and think about maybe a task that doesn't feel as energizing, that might be draining, something you might do repeatedly. Maybe it's something that you procrastinate on or it feels heavy, it's tedious to you. We all have these things. And Moxie, would you be willing to share one of those for you?
Yes, I will be very open here and lean into my honesty, but database management is very tedious to me. Database and process management, I struggle there. Hard to bring up my zest for that task.
Well, what I love is you're already connecting, right, to the step 3, which is essentially how can you apply the strengths that energize you into this, right? The things that you said about the energizing task, zest and love, right, were some of the ones that you named. What do you think? How could you bring that strength into that task, that piece of database, management?
Yeah, I think love is probably going to be the best connector for me, is to remember that when I'm doing database management and working on these processes, it may not feel like I'm working with real people, but I really am. It's just in a different way. So my love for people and that type of work can be transferred and applied here.
Yeah, I love that. How could you do that this week? When you're in, because I already know Moxie will be in the midst of doing that. We'll be in, I don't know if you saw her eyes bulging like, ooh, but what's one way that you can kind of insert that piece of love into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a big database task to do today, but really just remembering and thinking about the people who are being impacted by the work that I do. So it might be tedious. I'm just sitting there, taking notes, doing documentation, connecting different pieces and attaching things. It feels very tedious and boring, but just remembering there are real human beings on the other side of this task, like being excited about the possibility there, leaning into my curiosity and trying to make connections of like, okay, we had this conversation, but what else could I do there? What else is available?
I love this because you pulled in some of those other strengths you had originally identified, and where you said, I probably can only bring love into this. But then you were naming curiosity and right, and some of the and zest into that. So that's beautiful. And for everyone else, I do want you to take a second. And if you're comfortable, maybe put kind of a commitment in the chat of one way you want to use a character strength this week to alter maybe a less engaging task, something that drains you. It might not be a task. It might just be a meeting that you know is coming up. It might be something you got to do individually. But is there anything that you would like to think about, a creative way to use your strength to kind of help you navigate that task? And so I'll give everyone a second if they want to put something in the chat. And I know Sarah just shared a prompt also. So we've got some coming in. Yeah. Mm. Oh, I think Karen said using love and kindness towards self for tax returns. I felt that in my soul. Uh, mm, just this line of thinking in general. Yeah. Practicing it in your side of your leadership. Beautiful. I love all of thank you, Tom. I see that. Yeah. I also hear humor in that still, Tom. Uh, Yeah, beautiful. So those are you keep coming in because once we've written it out, right, we can help kind of remember that and hold that. But this strategy is something that you could take. I think someone asked about pieces and processes for this. VIA does support this, and that's within our Workplaces at Their Best program. So this is a strategy that comes directly from Workplaces at Their Best, and something that we practice and do. And so the final part that I'll name is just that we're running a special right now. So just saying it super quick, but it's Love 20, and it actually goes both to, yes, our certification, but to any VIA products right now. So don't worry, we'll email this out. But the only other thing I want to name is as we're closing, I just really want to offer everyone a really sincere thank you. Thank you for your time today, for the care, the openness, the engagement that I know was going on in all of the chats.